Okay, so I'm going to talk you through here how to answer a 12-mark question. So I'm going to do something that's a bit counterintuitive, which is I'm going to start with the question first. You really wouldn't do this in the exam, but you'll see why later on I choose to go with the question first. So the question is, analyze the impact on Apple of moving production facilities to China. In your answer, you should consider ethical considerations, financial implications. You must evaluate which area has seen the biggest impact. Use evidence to support your answer. Okay, so I want to firstly highlight all the different parts of the case study where either ethical considerations or financial considerations are discussed. So if I look at that first sentence there, I can see there that clearly there's a reference there to saving costs by moving the factories to the States. Then there's another, there's a line here that's both financial and ethical. This whole idea of there were workers in China being paid an average of £1.12 per hour or a salary of £180 per month. So that's both financial and ethical considerations. They work an average of 10 hours per day, which is long, not kind of outlandish, but still long. That last sentence there, you could say that it's to do with ethics there in terms of the conditions, but it's not really that relevant for what I will be using as my answer today. Okay, moving forward then, there's this element in the next paragraph about how they pay for 60,000 employees to go on college courses in China. I think that's very relevant. The next sentence talks about how that Apple are growing. Not really sure that that's relevant for ethical considerations, but it definitely is for financial implications, because it talks about how China is a growing market for Apple, and so you could then argue that them moving their factory to China may help with them developing that market. Okay, so those are the main points that I'm going to look to refer to. So what I'm going to do now is just think about how I go about answering this question. And I'm just going to put in front of the camera here something that you'll be familiar with, which is of course the crib sheet for this. So the crib sheet for answering 12-mark questions is essentially 3 paragraphs, which is you have paragraph 1, which is where you've considered the first point, you define it, you then give your point, you give an example from the case study, and then explain that point using connectives, and I'll model that for you shortly. Then you give a second paragraph, which is the second bullet point over here, so hard to show on the camera here, but when I talk about the second bullet point, I'm talking about these here, so the financial implications. And then finally, I then have to give a conclusion where I try to justify which of the 2 options I think has had the biggest impact. And so you can see here just a modelled sentence to start with, something along the lines of, I think the financial implications have seen the biggest impact because, and then you go through and give your critical reasoning. And that critical reasoning might be something to do with the case study, might be to do with what you think might be the objectives of the business, might be to do with short-term, long-term implications. It really does depend on the case study and the nature of the business as to what type of critical reasoning you could use. However, I draw your attention to this last point, which is really fundamental to all the 12 markers, which is that you should be linking to other areas of the specification throughout your answer. So that's something that hopefully you'll see me do, and more importantly, I'll try and signpost that for you when I'm trying to do that, when I'm trying to draw in other aspects beyond the case study of things that we have learned in the specification that aren't related to finance or ethics. So things like, for example, marketing or HR. Okay, so I'm going to move out of the way now. And now I'm going to pull this back here, and I'm now going to try and answer this 12-mark question. So, my first starting point is my first paragraph. So my first paragraph is going to deal with bullet 1, which is ethical considerations, and the first thing I need to do is give a definition of what ethical considerations are. So, ethical considerations are where businesses decide whether an action is morally right or wrong. So there's my definition. Okay, let's just remind ourselves really quickly. I should then be given, so I've done my definition there, so now I'm going to give my point, okay, which is Apple have moved their production to a country with much cheaper wages, salary. I'll put a full stop there. I'm going to put here. So I've made my point now. Apple have moved their production to a country with much cheaper wages and salary. Just going to elaborate that a little bit before I give the example from the case study. So, which some people may feel exploits these workers. So that's my point, which is that they have moved their production to a country with cheaper wages, salaries, and that some people might feel that that's exploiting these workers. So now what I've got to do is now I've got to just give my example from the case study. So this is where I'm going to now refer to this whole area up here, which is how much they're going to get paid. It states that, let's move over, it states that the workers are only going to be paid £1.12 per hour. And I put in brackets £110, £180 per month. This is much less than what an American worker would have been, so I'm going to move on to the next page, would have been paid, which could be seen as unethical. Okay, so now if that's my reference to the case study, if we go back, it now talks about how I need to now explain my point. Okay, so I'm going to go on and explain this further. Now, explaining this further is it was all about using connectives. Your connectives are because, therefore, this means that, as a result of. So those are the types of connectives that we should be using to expand on our points. So if we look at my points so far, I've talked about how they've now employing much cheaper workers, which is less than what an American worker would have been paid, which could be seen as unethical. So now I'm going to further develop this. And I'm going to put here, however, and I'm going to, as I do this, refer to the case study. However, this wage salary is probably in line with what the cost of living is in China. So there I'm just talking about how actually this is relative to what Chinese people might be paid, actually a reasonable amount of money. I'm then going to go on and just elaborate a little bit further on this point. In addition, this move has created much needed jobs in a developing nation. One final point I'm now going to discuss with this, I could probably just leave it there to be honest, but I want to try and weave in a little bit of theory from outside of finance and ethics, which, as you know, is an important part of 12 markers. So I'm just going to also refer here to what this might look like in terms of their brand image. Although moving their facility to China and paying workers much less could damage Apple's brand image. Okay, so I've introduced there some marketing as Americans may view this negatively. Okay, going to full stop, and now move on. So I'm going to go back now, and now I'm going to talk about the financial implications. New paragraph. So I'm going to move on to a new paragraph here. Okay, so financial implications are where businesses consider whether a decision will make them more money or lose them money. Full stop. Okay, so what's my point about this one? I'm going to talk about how this has saved money for Apple. This move of the factory will have saved Apple money. I'm going to put here, better term actually is reduced costs. I said save money a couple of times up here as well. So we'll have reduced costs. Okay, now where's the reference to the case study in here? So we've got here clearly, let's put it down. So we've got here in the case study, closed all production facilities in the USA to help save costs. We can also see here that they made a net profit of 54,000 million. Okay, so I can refer to that as well. So I'm going to go back up to here and say the case study states that this will have helped save costs and as a result has helped them achieve 54,000 million pounds. Oh, sorry, dollars. It's dollars. My apologies. Dollars of net profit. Okay, so if we go back to the marks, the crib sheet. So I've done my define my point. define what a financial consideration is. I've given my point, I've given an example for case, and now I need to explain that. And I'm going to use as my connective again, I think I've already kind of covered the fact that they've saved money and they've saved costs. So I think it's worth probably just making another point about the financial implications, or developing this point. So it says here, the case study states that this will have helped save costs, and as a result this has helped them achieve £54,000 million of net profit. I'm going to put here then, however, Apple will have had to redistribute some of that saved cost to paying for the 60,000 employees to go on college courses. So there I've developed my point, talking about how even though they've saved some cost from obviously moving the facility, equally they've obviously had to then spend some money. I'm just going to put here, this may help to offset any negative PR the move has made, as providing career development is seen as an ethically good thing to do. Okay, so now I'm going to provide my final conclusion. I think that the financial consideration has had the biggest impact on Apple's operations. Okay, and now I'm going to justify that. This is because, as the case study states, they have made incredible profit at the end of 2015, and so people clearly have not been put off by using Apple's services. The huge profit suggests the move has had a very positive impact on reducing costs. And that's my 12 mark answer. Now obviously I've probably spent 1 or 2 minutes more than I should have on that. It should really be 12 marks, 12 minutes. and I've probably spent a couple more minutes than that writing it out. That's partly probably because I'm talking you through it, but hopefully that gives you an idea of how you can go about writing a 12-mark answer. You do also have another exampler available to you that was provided in the exam. I will finish by just drawing your attention to this document once again and just saying this is what you should be using as your guidance. This is what's going to help you to get to the level 4 banded response. Thank you.